Just over a year ago, I put out my first impressions video on the Osmo Action 5 Pro, and one of the things that bothered me most was how aggressive the HDR looked. The image sometimes felt borderline cartoony when using the out-of-the-box defaults. When I later picked up the Osmo 360, the same issue popped up again. Colours were often oversaturated, and I started noticing other strange artifacts too, like haloing around tree leaves and high contrast edges. So with both cameras, I quickly switched to shooting almost exclusively in D-Log-M. This is the colour mode DJI recommends if you plan to grade your footage, but that wasn't my reason. Like many people, I was shooting in D-Log-M and just slapping on the official LUT simply to bypass the extra processing normal mode forces onto your image. Interestingly, things were different with the older Osmo Pocket 3. Its normal mode looked quite natural, so I'd happily shoot in normal unless I planned to grade. And from conversations I've seen online, the Osmo Action 4, which was released around the same time as the Pocket 3, also had a more natural rendering that many people still prefer over the look you get on newer DJI cameras. So what about the latest Osmo Action 6? Does it keep DJI's recent trend of sharper images, heavier HDR, and more contrast, or does it revert to that more natural look we got back in 2023? Well, the Osmo Action 6 definitely continues the new punchier style. Now, which style is better is personal preference, but I found specific situations where this extra processing in normal mode can create real problems, and why I'll be sticking with D-Log-M. Let's go through them. Now, everyone loves a deep blue sky that pops, but sometimes the sky just isn't that blue. This is a photo I took on my iPhone, and it's a pretty accurate representation of what the sky actually looked like in that moment. Cloudy, dull, and only a hint of blue. And then here's what the Osmo Action 6 captured. You'd be forgiven for thinking this was shot on a bright, clear day. In normal color mode, the Action 6 has this tendency to push the blues really hard, often to the point where the footage feels detached from reality. Now here's the same scene in D-Log-M with the official LUT applied. The colours are much more honest, and it actually captures the gloomier, slightly awkward weather of that moment. And here's another clip where things just feel a bit off. It was actively raining, and in reality the sky was more white and grey than blue, but again, the Osmo Action 6 in normal mode is insisting on bringing out a much nicer blue sky. Another issue you can clearly see in the normal color profile is the haloing around fine details, especially on things like leaves. In this example, look at the red leaves against the sky. They almost look like they're glowing, as if there's a bright outline wrapped around them. It's subtle at times, but once you notice it, you can't unsee it. This exaggerated haloing is a side effect of the increased contrast and clarity in normal mode. Switching to D-Log-M makes a big difference. The image is a little softer, but in a good way. The leaves blend into the scene naturally instead of looking artificially separated from the background. Here's another key difference: sharpening. The normal color profile applies a significantly higher level of sharpening than D-Log-M, even when both are set to the same texture value in camera. Take this clip as an example, and look at the mountain range in the distance. In the normal profile, the edges of the trees are extremely well defined, almost etched into the scene. Now look at the D-Log-M version. The image is noticeably softer. The tree lines aren't as starkly separated. To prove it's just processing, if I apply a simple sharpen effect in DaVinci Resolve to this D-Log-M footage, it brings us much closer to that normal mode look. In the end, this is more personal preference, but to my eyes, the normal footage sometimes crosses the line into being too sharp. So shooting in D-Log-M, or at the very least dialing down the texture setting, can give you a more natural and less processed look. For our final example, let's go indoors and look at low light. This shot really shows the unpredictable consequences of the normal mode's heavy processing. Notice how the lights have extra pop, and the overall contrast and saturation are pushed much higher. The normal color profile looks a lot closer to that plasticky aesthetic you get in Super Night mode, which personally I'm not a huge fan of. In comparison, the D-Log-M version looks much more natural. The Christmas tree has a softer, less cartoony appearance, and the bulbs have a gentle bloom instead of a harsh glare. And here's another advantage: because D-Log-M isn't aggressively processed, you have a much cleaner slate to work with in post. Want a cozy, Christmassy feel? You can easily add a halation effect in post. Trying to do this on normal footage often backfires because you're just stacking processing on top of processing and the image gets real messy. Now, after all of that, you might think I'm saying normal mode is unusable, but that's definitely not the takeaway of this video. I've simply been highlighting the more extreme cases where its extra processing can cause real problems. But DJI has likely shifted towards this vibrant and punchier look for a reason. It's immediately engaging. It lines up perfectly with current social media aesthetics, and it's designed to pop on a small screen and grab attention in a feed. If that's your goal and you want footage that's ready to post straight out of camera, normal mode is probably the way to go. If you try to force that punchy look onto D-Log-M in post, you'll often do more damage than good. On the other hand, if you prefer a softer, more filmic and less processed look, then D-Log-M is most likely the better choice. This is the look I'm going for, and for that reason I'm sticking with D-Log-M on the Osmo Action 6, even for shots I have no intention of manually grading. Now, speaking of filmic looks, with the Osmo Action 6 there's actually one more option to consider. These are the new film tones that you can apply in camera to give your footage a very different look compared to the standard normal profile. At first I dismissed them pretty quickly as a gimmick because I rarely use built-in filters on any camera. But then I saw creators like Chris Meets Chris and Really Good TV using them to really great effect. And it clicked. If you find a preset you love and make it your signature look, this is just a quicker and cheaper way to achieve that look than using custom LUTs. And that's assuming you can even find a custom LUT that matches the quality of the DJI film tone you like. Plus, you can monitor your final footage as you shoot, which isn't possible with custom LUTs. That being said, I personally won't be using them. My shooting style is pretty spontaneous, and I never know exactly how or where I'll end up using my footage, so I'm always cautious about baking in any specific look that I can't undo later. So to wrap things up, I'll be sticking with D-Log-M on the Osmo Action 6. I just prefer the more natural, true-to-life look over the punchier normal mode. TikTok and Reels creators beware though, DJI most probably isn't just cranking up the HDR and saturation for fun. There's a good chance they have real data showing that the crispy, eye-popping normal look performs better in short form. But that's just my take. Which mode do you prefer on the Osmo Action 6? Let me know in the comments.